Good morning and welcome to our daily reflection on this Tuesday, the second week in Ordinary Time. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. As Jesus was passing through a field of grain on the Sabbath, his disciples began to make a path while picking the heads of grain. At this, the Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and he and his companions were hungry? How he went into the house of God where Abiathar was high priest and ate the bread of offering that only the priests could lawfully eat and shared it with his companions? Then he said to them, 'The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. That is why the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath.'" The Gospel of the Lord. I think one of the great challenges of this moment that we're living in is the opportunity to determine how we can use it to look at ourselves, to determine exactly who we are. You see, so often we let our busyness, our responsibilities, our reactions to things, we let all of that define who we are. And so in many cases, we decide who we are maybe based on what sides we take. It seems in this moment, there's more questions than answers. And when it seems the questions of each day, well, they just seem to be leading to more questions. And in that, we can forget to take the time to remember who we are and who we're called to be. And this reluctance to take the time to remind ourselves who we are is really nothing new. When you think about life in our modern culture, we never seem to leave ourselves any time for introspection or any time to refocus ourselves. Today's gospel, we hear this whole discussion Jesus has about the Sabbath. For us Christians, of course, the Sabbath is celebrated on Sunday, the day of the resurrection. It made me think, and I may have reflected on this in a homily or two in the past, but it made me think of Sundays growing up for myself when I grew up. For me, growing up in the Ozone Park section of Queens, Sunday morning meant Mass. I think it was usually 9:30 Mass at St. Mary Gate of Heaven. And after Mass, we'd make two stops in two of our the very few stores that were open on Sundays. One store was the local candy store. There we would pick up the Sunday newspaper. My dad would be getting ready to read the sports section. My mom would be looking for the magazine section, if you remember that. And me, the comic strips. We used to call them the funny pages. But that would have to wait till we got home because there would be another important stop to make, and that would be at the Oxford Bakery. There we'd get our weekly dose of fresh rolls, crumb buns, and of course my favorite, jelly donuts. If we weren't going for dinner at one of my grandparents' homes, we would be home, first reading that newspaper as the smell of sauce from the big pot on the kitchen stove would be invading our senses. Dinner would be early, probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon, be followed by maybe playing some board games or watching a sporting event on television, or in the nice weather, spending some time outside. And then, of course, in the early evening, we'd eat again. We usually had cold cuts. Basically, we ate lunch because we already had dinner earlier. And this would be followed by watching our Sunday night TV shows like Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, remember that one? And of course, The Wonderful World of Disney. This quiet, simple ritual would only be superseded by our trips to Brooklyn to visit with grandparents and aunts and uncles and my cousins. Often dinner there, after a nice big dinner, always early in the afternoon, we'd be followed by a walk on the avenue. It was a peaceful walk filled with great discussion. We'd be able to have great discussion on a Brooklyn thoroughfare because on those days, what would normally be a busy city street with shoppers and people rushing to get things, well, none of that happened on Sundays because, and I know our young people might have a hard time believing this, it was quiet on the streets because all of the stores were closed. Even those candy stores and bakeries that were opened on Sunday morning, by noontime, they closed. You know, I reminisce about how different Sundays were years ago, about how different the Sabbath was years ago, not just to pine for the good old days, but perhaps to say we need to value what was given to us. We hear Jesus say today in response to the Pharisees as they try to question his disciples doing a simple task on the Sabbath. Jesus says to them, "Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." The Sabbath is not made just to give us rest, but to remind us, to give us the opportunity to remind us who we are, that we are indeed created by an all-powerful and loving God, and that we have a God who loved us so much that he gave his very life for us to save us, to destroy sin, and to destroy even death itself. We are sinners, we know that. We have troubles. But we're people of good news. We are people of hope. And we're reminded of that at every Eucharist, especially the Sunday Eucharist. For on each Sunday, on each little Easter, each Sabbath, we have the opportunity to remind ourselves of that hope, of who we are. And so let us give thanks to God for the Sabbath and every opportunity we have to remember exactly who we are. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for this reflection. May God bless you this day and stay safe.